Hello everyone, I'm so excited to meet you again with another interesting video. In this video, we will discuss about how to create a release plan for an Agile project. When it comes to release planning, there are two types of release planning in Agile. The first one is called on-demand scheduling. This is used in Agile methodologies like Kanban, and it uses cycle time of the bottleneck process step. Whereas in Scrum and in XP, DSDM methodologies, we use something called Timebox scheduling. In this video, we can talk about Timebox scheduling. We also call this as the release planning exercise. So I will create an actual release plan for you and demonstrate how to create a release plan. Moreover, we will also learn about the two types of release planning we have in Agile. The first one is fixed date, the other one is fixed scope. So let's get started. Alright, let's start with the prerequisite things needed to begin the release planning activity. The first thing is we need to have the product backlog. The product backlog will have all the features and functionalities expected in the final product. So we form the product backlog, and here in this example, in the scope column, you could see in total there are 50 features, and these are the 50 features we expected to provide in the final product. And we also estimated the features using story points. Story points are virtual units or non-standard units we use to size a feature comparing it to another feature. Okay, we call this as relative sizing. I made a video on relative sizing, and you can check in the description for the link of this video. So if you want to learn about planning poker, story points and relative sizing, please watch that video. So I assume that you know about relative sizing. So here we have the sizes of each feature, and here we have the priority of the features. So we have used Mascot technique to prioritize the items in the product backlog, and primarily we should have all the high value items in the top of the product backlog. Okay, so must have items will be in the top of the product backlog, followed by should have features, then could have features, then finally would have or will not have features. So that's about the product backlog. Now to start the release planning, the very first input we need is the total amount of work we have in the product backlog. So to find that, we need to add the story points of all the features listed in the product backlog, and if you find the total value, it will indicate how much amount of work we have in the product backlog. So in this case, the total value is 300. So in total, we have 300 story points amount of work in the product backlog. We can also size the features using idle days. We either use idle days or story points. I made another video on idle days versus story points. Please check the description for the video link. Okay, so we have the first information needed to prepare the release plan. That is the total amount of work. So I'm gonna start with the first step. To prepare the release plan, we need to follow 4 basic steps. The first step is to find the number of iterations or sprints we need to complete all the items in the product backlog. So to compute that, the first information is how much work we have in the product backlog, the total work we have in the product backlog. And we found that it's 300 story points. Okay. Second is we need to know the team velocity. So team velocity is all about how much work the team can accomplish per iteration. So in this case, we understood that the team velocity is 20 story points per iteration. Now, if you want to learn about how to create or calculate team velocity, you can find a video link in the description. I made a very detailed video on team velocity, so please check this video. So we have the basic 2 inputs needed to prepare the release plan. So as I told you, the first step is to find number of iterations or sprint needed. So to do that, to find that, what we have to do, we need to take the total amount of work in the product backlog, that is 300, and divide that by the team velocity, 20, and you got 15. So this means if you can do 20 story points amount of work per iteration to complete 300 story points, how many iterations you would take? Very simple. The first iteration we complete 20, and the next 40, and the third iteration 60, fourth iteration 80, fifth iteration 100. So we're going to take 15 iterations to complete all the work we have in the product backlog. That is 300 story points amount of work in the product backlog. So we take the total work, divide that by the team velocity to find the number of iterations. Now, the second step is to find out the duration of the project. Well, we now have the number of iterations we're going to run. Now it's time to find out the total duration the project will go on. Let's say I'm starting the work today, the project today. How many months or weeks we're going to take to complete all the items in the product backlog? Now we know only the number of iterations we need. So we have to convert this into calendar weeks or days or months. So to do that, we have to take what is the duration of each iteration. In Agile, we follow iterations of 1 week to 4 week duration. Typically, we prefer iterations of 2 weeks duration. But once you fix to a number, you should not change. Let's say you opted to use iterations of 2 weeks duration. We should continue with that iteration size, the time box of 2 weeks duration, throughout the project. So in this case, let's assume we are following 2 weeks iterations, and we know that the project is going to take 15 iterations, and each iteration of 2 weeks. So to find out the project duration, we need to multiply the number of iterations, that is 15, and each iteration is of 2 weeks. So multiply that with 2 weeks, you got 30 weeks here. So we are talking about a project of 30 weeks duration. Because each iteration is of 2 weeks duration, we're going to run 15 iteration, and so we found that this project is of 30 weeks duration. Okay, now we found the duration of the project. So we are done with step 2. Now let's talk about step 3. Okay, step 3 is about finding out how many number of iterations you're going to have within a release. Well, a release is again a time box. Normally, when you finish a feature in an iteration, we don't directly ship that to the production or the customer. We wait for several iterations to complete, and we make a software package. We consolidate all the features we produced in 4 or 5 iterations and put them together as a software package and release to the client. Now, this time window is called as release. In a release, you will have multiple iterations. Let's say you're going for a release duration of 2 months. Inside this 2 months duration, how many iterations you can fit? That's the question. So if you take a release duration of 2 months, technically this means 8 weeks of time, and we know that every iteration is of 2 weeks duration, so you can fit 4 iterations inside every release of 2 months duration. Okay, now how many number of releases we would need in this project? So to calculate that, we know that in total we're going to run 15 iterations or sprints in this project, and we know that you can fit 4 iterations or sprints inside each release duration, that is of 2 months duration. So we're going to do the division. So take 15, divide that by 4, you got 3.75. So technically we're going to run 4 releases to complete 15 iterations in this project. Now let's visualize this using a infographic. Can you see here? So this is the total project duration of 30 calendar weeks, and we calculated that to complete 300 story points amount of work, we need to run in total 15 sprints or iterations, and in each iteration we're going to complete 20 story points amount of work. And because here each release is of 2 months duration, you can fit 4 sprints inside each release. So therefore sprint 1 to 4 are part of release 1, sprint 5 to 8 are part of release 2, sprint 9 to 12 are part of release 3, and sprint 13 to 15 are part of release 4. Okay, and each release is of 8 weeks duration, that is 2 months of time is equal to 8 weeks of duration. Therefore, we're going to run in total 30 calendar weeks of work in this project. Okay, and you can also directly go to this sheet and understand that we calculated we need 30 calendar weeks to complete all the items in the product backlog. So that's what you see here. The total project duration is of 30, and we're going to have 4 releases inside it. In release 1, we're going to release 80 story points amount of work. And in release 2, we're going to release next 80, release 3 is another 80, and release 4, the remaining 60 story points amount of work. So let's visualize it. So you have in total 300 story points amount of work. You're going to run 4 releases. So you're going to equally split the amount of work you're going to do in each release. So therefore, in each release, you're going to do roughly 80 story points amount of work. So we will find out what are the features we're going to deliver in release 1. So you have to add up the story points of features from the top, and you have to stop here because if you see the total, it's 78. Please look at the bottom, it's 78. So it's close to 80. If you add one more feature, then it might become 83. If you reduce a feature, it becomes 77. So let's be very close to 80. So 78 story points amount of work will go in release 1. So we will complete all these 14 features in 4 iterations. In each iteration, we'll complete 20 story points amount of work, and we tentatively complete 14 features in 4 iterations or sprints. All right. Now, we do the same for the next set of features. We will find out what are the features we're going to deliver in release 2. So we just need to add up these numbers, and we found that this is close to 85. We don't want to underutilize the team capacity. For example, if you take up to 8, this feature 24, we have only 72. So let's add up till 25. We found 85 is the number very close to 80 here. So we're going to deliver feature 15 to feature 25 in release 2. And if you look at the remaining features in the list, feature 26 to feature 40 will go in release 3. So we're going to add up these numbers, and we found that in total we have 74 story points. If you add up one more feature, then it becomes 87. That's too much. So let's keep 74. The remaining features will be done in release 4, that is 63. So that's the plan. Now we're going to take 4 releases, and each release we're going to have 4 iterations or sprints, and roughly we're going to complete 80 story points amount of work. If we do this, we're going to have 4 releases. Release 1 due date is calendar week 8. Release 2 due date is calendar week 16. Release 3 due date is calendar week 24. And release 4 due date is calendar week 30. Okay, so that's how we do release planning for agile projects following iterations or sprints. Now, whatever you see here is a kind of release planning. We call this release planning as fixed date release planning, because we fix the date when we're going to have the releases. That is, by end of every second month, we're going to make a release. Okay, that's a plan. So that's why we call this as fixed date release plan. There's another type called fixed scope. So here we are not very particular about the duration of each release. Here we are concerned about what are the features need to be delivered in each release. Let's take this example. In this case, we are not going with, on every release we need to complete 80 story points amount of work, or we need to run 4 iterations. So that's about fixed duration. In every release we're going to run 4 iterations or 8 iterations. That's about fixed date. The release dates will be fixed. Whereas in this case, we don't fix the dates. We don't finalize how many iterations we're going to run inside each release. We don't make them a constant. Instead, we will focus on the features need to be completed in each release. So the duration of each release can be of different sizes. They won't be same as in the fixed date release planning. Okay, so in this case we picked these 10 features, and if you see the total story points of this 10 features is just 68, but for some reason, let's say this is a banking software, we completed all the account related features in one release and make it available for the client. And we will work on money transfer features in the next release and make it available for the client. So you want to work on features based on grouping. You want to group certain related features and make them available for the client. Also, we think from the value point of view. We want to deliver at least 40% of the total value in the first release, or 30% of the total project value in terms of revenue or in terms of customer satisfaction in the second release. Okay, so we don't stick to fixed release durations. We pick the right set of features from the product backlog and decide they're going to go in one release. Okay, so that's about fixed scope. So for release 1, the scope is fixed. All the 10 features need to be done. Whether you're going to take 3 sprints or 5 sprints or 8 sprints, until we complete all these features, there won't be a release. Once we're done with these features, we're going to have a release. So in fixed date, you're going to have periodicity. Every release will happen after every 2 months or 3 months or 5 months. But that's not the case with fixed scope. Okay, keep this in mind. So in the first release, we're going to release these 10 features. So to implement these 10 features, we need just 3 sprints, because they are around about 68 story points per iterations or sprint. We can do 20 story points amount of work. So we found that somewhere between 3 to 4 iterations would be needed. And for the next set of features, we found that we have in total 50 story points or 49 story points amount of work. And considering the team velocity, again we found that we need 3 sprints. But for release 3, we have so much of work. If you see, in total we're going to complete 133 story points amount of work, and we found that to complete 133 story points amount of work, we need to run roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 iterations or sprints. Okay, so how to find this? 133 divided by 20, the team velocity. And finally we are left out with 50 story points amount of work, and that will be done as part of release 4. And to complete 50 story points amount of work, roughly we need 2 to 3 iterations. Okay, so if you see the release dates here, they are not equally distanced. You don't see periodicity. Whenever we complete all the planned features of that particular release, we make a release. Okay, so that's the difference between fixed scope release plan and fixed date release plan. All right, now release plans should help us to know when we complete the project and when we can deliver each item in the product backlog, when we complete each iterations, when we complete each release. So it will give us an overview of how we're going to do the work. Also, they will help us to track the actual performance. You do not have a plan with you. How can you track your actual performance? How can you find out, are we on track, or are we behind the schedule or ahead of the schedule? So every project must have a schedule, and Agile projects are no exceptions. However, we will be optimizing, updating these plans very often. For example, the total amount of work in the product backlog will change. In the middle of the project, we will re-estimate the sizes of the work, the user stories. The velocity of the team might change. Some more features will be added to the product backlog. Some certain items may be removed from the product backlog. Okay, so based on this, we have to redo the calculations and establish the plan again. So we have to keep on updating the plan based on new learnings and discoveries. So progressive elaboration is very much applied in agile planning. Okay, so that's pretty much about release planning. I hope in this video you understood how to create a release plan, both fixed date and fixed scope. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel. I regularly come up with a lot of project management related learning materials, videos, and publish them on my YouTube channel. And you can subscribe to my channel and learn project management concepts at ease. And one more thing, if you're interested to take any project management training, at Gantt Scholar we offer excellent project management training. You can find the details in the description. If you want to take PMP training, we offer excellent project management training for PMP exam aspirants. You can enroll in our bootcamp, take the first 2 days of the training for free, and if you like the training, you can continue with us by paying the training fee. Okay, that's all for now. I will see you again with another interesting video. Take care. Bye-bye.